So you go through all that, and this is getting to the end of the 70s, beginning of the 80s. You're married. You get married to my mother, Susan, and then I'm a thought along the way. And this is, what year was it that you transitioned and decided that it's time for something new?
81.
81. 1 year before I'm born.
Right.
Okay. So talk about how that came to be.
Well, that same guy loved softball and racquetball, right? I told him, I said, listen, I think I want to work in your industry. He said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to be a casino host. Well, that was like asking for the moon back then. But I saw the guys that were doing it, and I said, I think I can do better. And so he supported it, gave me an interview, got me an interview with a guy who basically trashed me the whole interview. Didn't want to do it, but he put his foot down, they hired me. And soon I became head host. And then, I left the Tropicana and went to the Golden Nugget, where during the heydays of the Golden Nugget, with Steve Wynn and Diana Ross and Frank Sinatra and all the glamour that was ever brought to Atlantic City. We used to have 200, 300 seat showroom, and we'd bring acts like that in there. So you can imagine the play we had to bring to try to cover those acts. And I was part of that. And mostly what they made me do was the biggest break I ever got. I was to greet all the VIPs coming in on the VIP weekends. I had to stand by the VIP station and greet them. And all the other hosts would say, "Oh, you got a bad deal. You got." I said, "No, good. You think it's a bad deal? I'll talk to you later." And I met every one of them. Well, lo and behold, when things didn't work out at the Golden Nugget because they kept bringing in their own guys for me to train and them to promote, I left and I went over to Trump Marina. I didn't go to Trump Marina. I went to the Atlantic City Hilton, but they didn't get a license, and Trump came in and bought it. So now I'm going from Steve Wynn to Trump. But nonetheless, I've got a lot of people I met, a lot of people I know. And I decided instead of being a host, I wanted to be a salesman. I wanted to be in what we call player development. And I had a great bank of business. I was a leading player development guy at the Trump Marina at that time. And I got some Trump stories if you want to go into it.
We can do whatever you're comfortable with. I mean, he's kind of out there in the world pretty good, so people know a lot of things about him.
He is that.
So feel free.
One of the great stories, they bought Mar-a-Lago, okay? So I got two players that were spending $1 million a year with us. And I make arrangements for them to visit Mar-a-Lago. And they're going to stay for the weekend, Thursday to Monday. So we set the whole thing up. Ivana Trump comes up and says, they'll not stay Thursday to Monday. They'll come in Saturday, stay Sunday, and go home Monday. I said, Ivana, these people, you can't tell these people this. They might not be you, but they're wealthy people, and they're spending a lot of money. They're your customer. Lo and behold, we couldn't bring them. I had to go down there with my boss, his wife, and your mother, and just sit there and have all this service and everything, like as if we were royalty. Boy, I'll tell you what, I was as uncomfortable as I could possibly be. So the next year, we decide to run a sales contest. Whoever gets the most people gets to go down there. Oh, I stayed in Mar-a-Lago, by the way. I stayed in the suite that was featured in Town and Country. And so I got the use of the whole place. The next year, the contest was whoever gets the most players would go down and be the host. So I won. So I was the host of inviting 200 people to a cocktail party and then another 40 or 50 people to an overnight stay, and maybe it was 30 or 40 people overnight stay, and dinner, a big dinner on Saturday night. So lo and behold, Cocktail party starts. It's raining hard. Can't get around. You can't walk out on the grounds. So we're all in this one room. I'm waiting. Ivana comes out, dressed to the nines. Where's Donald? So I don't know. Ivana, I'm not sure. And lo and behold, he was with Marla Maples. So
Whoops.
he doesn't show up. She walks around for 20 minutes. I'm introducing her. She leaves, goes back to her suite. Now it's me and 200 people, no Donald Trump. Yeah, he's right around the corner. I didn't know what to say. All I was worried about, somebody's going to steal an ashtray or whatever was going to happen. And, this was a gaming crowd. And he comes in finally at like last 15 minutes and gets up and makes his little speech and whatnot. Then takes me and Ivana around and says clever things like, watch this guy, about his wife. I mean, what are you talking about? That was Donald Trump. And that's the true story. Man. And that was my claim to fame. We had dinner. The night we had dinner, Saturday night, everybody went around and said what they did, right? And I got my turn. And I stood up and what I had done all that weekend. I check baggage and make sure you get on the bus at time. That's what I do. So one guy says, he gets the last guy, and he says, well, I don't know about you people, but I eat this way every night. That was a funny line. I've never forgotten that line. He was a cool guy, that guy.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're, working your way through host / player development, which is really, as you described. When I talk about it in our industry, I compare it to commercial real estate brokerage. Right. We're out sourcing clients and deals, but you're sourcing gamblers to come into the casino. And I assume being compensated in some way, shape, or form based on your production.
A lot of salary with bonuses, but it was mistakenly put together back in the day with salaries.
Right.
It should have been a small salary and bonuses.
Yeah, which could have been very large if you're very successful, right?
Now the salaries just go up and up and up in order to keep the guy happy and in place.
Right.
And his production could go down and you could still, generate more salary. So it's a little broken model.
Right. So as we move into the 90s, you start to shift more into marketing, which is more on the strategic front with, the casino and how do you generate more overall activity in the place? You start to get into other elements of the casino, like entertainment and the hotel and things like that. So talk about, what was your first, in your mind, your big break that kind of launched you in more the marketing side of the business and less the host and player development? And what was the timing on that?
Well, it's funny how that happened. First of all, we all left. We had a leader named Bucky Howard who got himself in a little bit of a jam, who got himself out of the jam. So we all left Trump Marina and went to Showboat. And at Showboat, I was still doing player development. But
and what year is this?
This is 1988.
Okay.
Yeah. And so anyway, I'm still doing player development. And lo and behold, Bucky leaves Showboat and goes to the Taj Mahal. And everybody followed him to the Taj Mahal. I was reluctant to go, but at the last minute I went. At the Taj Mahal, it was cluster blank, right? I wanted no parts of it. I was doing good. I was generating business, but there was a lot of hanky-panky going on. So I stayed there 10 months, and Showboat wanted me to come back. So I went back to Showboat to run the VIP marketing, mostly table games, and the reservation center for the slots and whatnot. And we did well. We overachieved because the Showboat wasn't built for that kind of business. Didn't have entertainment. Didn't have the best suites and rooms and whatnot. Had some pretty good food, but it had great player development people. I had a great team there, super team. All of them are successful today, all of them. So anyway, from there, Harris bought Showboat. And when they bought Showboat, they started all their Harris stuff. Great thinkers, nobody smarter in any room they've been in. It just frustrated me. I'm a street guy. I know what to do. I can put anything on paper. I'm educated. If you want to see a presentation, maybe I can't do the fancy things on the computer, but I can get somebody to do that for me. But my ideas can go in there. I got nowhere with them, and I wasn't comfortable. And the job opened up at resorts where I met my current boss, George Papanier, and we went out. I went to resorts with the idea that they were going to do I believe it was a $600 million redo. And when I got there, or $500 million, when I got there, I wasn't there 2 days to find out. It was more like 50 million.
Wow.
Okay. So now I'm at resorts. Politics are getting tough. Place is not going well. It had been doing well, but since the renovation, it was doing worse. And now I've got all the marketing now. For the first time, I have everything. I have the mass marketing, and that's where I learned the lesson. And I have the player development, I have the VIP marketing, I have everything. But I trusted the people in the mass marketing department to come up with the solutions for the calendar and the style in which we recruited customers. And they were off the mark. And I made the mistake of trusting them. And I learned a lesson, a negative lesson. Anyway, long story short, the job only lasted 10 months. The other group was out in about 15 months. So they cleaned house and sold the place, sold their interest out, got out. They wanted no parts of Atlantic City. And that's how I started in the overall marketing that way. But now I'm without a job. Right? And
well, let's first of all, I got to rewind a little bit to the Showboat and a couple of my memories there. I don't know about all the business because I was like 6 when you started there, but I know that the arcade was amazing and the bowling alley was sick. You had a nice big office overlooking the ocean. You had a typewriter that I would mess around with. Out in the bullpen, I think that was your secretary's typewriter. You had no methods of computer or typing at all.
No.
You had some legal pads and things like that. But we would go on Saturday a lot of times because your Saturday schedule was typically like you might play golf in the morning and then grab us, me, Paul, and Dana, and go into the property around maybe 2:00.
Yep.
And you'd hang with us for a while, and then you had to go work, and you'd drop us at the bowling alley and or the arcade and just let us go to town. And we had such a good time doing that. I mean, so much fun. And then we'd hook up for dinner in the property. And then the most frustrating part of the evening would happen for me was when you were walking out of the property and we couldn't get through the lobby without you talking to 62 people. And I would pull at your leg and like, oh, please, come on, can we leave? And it was just, I mean, growing up now as an adult in work situations, I understand it, but at the time it was excruciating to leave that place.
Yeah.
But we had a great time.
You guys did have a good time there. It was a special place. It overachieved in business levels. It did have some nice elements to it. They all got ripped out, and it all became gaming specific. But now it's ironically, the place is no longer a casino hotel, and they just built a water park.
Right.
So tell me, what works. I'm surprised they don't put a bowling center back in it.
They should.
Yeah.
But and the other quick story I wanted to tell too is that you guys had a Super Bowl party one year, and I was young, very young. I think I was in second grade. I know I was in second grade because that's the second part of the story. But there was like, it was like halftime and there was some kind of raffle being run or something like that. And somebody won a prize and they were up on the microphone and they were like stumbling over their words and drunk, and somebody from the crowd yelled, "Hey, somebody get this guy another drink." And then, laughter exploded and stuff like that. So one of the next day, maybe even the next day, I'm in school and Mrs. Connolly, my teacher, she kind of stumbles over a word. And I yell in the class, "Hey, somebody get this lady another drink."
Oh, jeez.
And I didn't know. It just was like, well, I got a laugh in this other venue, and I didn't know what it meant. I didn't even know the person was drunk. I'm 7 years old. But I said it, and it was maybe the one time in second grade that my parents got called or sent to the principal's office or something like that. It was not well received by Mrs. Connolly. But, you learn some colorful language hanging around the casino time to time.
Yeah, well, it wasn't always the best environment to put you in.
But hey, we developed a little of the street smarts that we wouldn't have otherwise had growing up in Northfield, New Jersey versus Atlantic City, Ducktown.
Yes.
But so anyway, and also the other thing I wanted to say is that during that time period and throughout our whole childhood, you're working, you're growing your career, you're busy. You're not working 40 hours a week. You're working 50, 60, 70 hours a week. Saturdays,
Always on the phone.
Always on the phone. But you were at, I don't know, 95% of our games. I mean, you didn't miss many.
No.
And you might have to be on the phone in your suit, the big giant brick phone, the big gray phone, whatever it took. But you were doing it. You didn't miss almost anything, whether it was a game or one of Dana's dance recitals or a school event. Like you found a way to get there.
Well, I had a kind of a overall type cover that I would put over the suit, and I'd leave it in the trunk, and I'd go to the game, and I'd put it on, and I'd change my shoes, and I'd watch the game or practice even, right?
Yeah,
because
we'll get into that.
Well, first of all, the games were important to me because I owned the team, right? Julie's Giants. And so I watched your soccer games, your baseball games, then Paul's baseball games, football games, Dana's soccer. She was really good. She gave it up. I could almost knock her in the head for that. She was really very good. I'll never forget her running down the field one day. I'm just coming into the game. I'm a little late. The game started. I'm running down the field, and a boy's running right by her. And she just takes her left elbow and knocks the kid off of her and knocks him down and goes on and plays. And she had this left foot in soccer where she scored like 20 goals as a JV team or something like that. And I couldn't get her to be summertime. She just was interested in her bikini and the beach. And I couldn't get her to stay as interested as I wish she had.
Yeah.
But, she's a fabulous person. She knew what she wanted to do. And she's doing it today. And so I shouldn't trade a single minute for it.
And then, of course, Michael later on with his everything, his baseball, his football, his golf. But I'm jumping around a little bit, but one of my favorite Mike stories is when you had to umpire one of his Little League games, and you were out at third base umpiring. And there was a play where the pitcher was not yet on the dirt. He wasn't on the mound, and one of the kids stole a base. So the play was still continuing. He went from second to third or something like that. And the coach of the other team said, no, the pitcher was on the dirt. He's got to go back to the base. And you're like, oh, that's not the rule. And then the other coach of the guy who had advanced that was safe also said, yeah, you're right. Send him back. It's okay. Go back to the base. And you said, well, if you guys don't want to play by the rules, I don't need to be here. And you walked off the field.
Never umpired again.
And not only did you walk off the field, most people that if they did that, they would just like go home or maybe go far away. You just went to the backstop to watch the game.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
No shame, no embarrassment.
No. If you're going to be stupid and not play the game, you don't need me. Right.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. But we could have another separate podcast on just the sports stories, but going back to resorts, and I can remember this well because I was a senior in high school, and I can remember the day that you came home and that had happened, and it was not a great day.
No,
You
no,
know,
it was devastating. It was
yeah,
the first time it ever happened to me, and in my career,
yeah,
in my life, and I was upset and wondering what's my next step. I wasn't broke, so I wasn't worried near term, but by the same token, because I had saved, but by the same token, I wasn't done my career. I had too
right,
much career left in me.
right. And I'm 17 years old, so and I'm one of the four children that's go to college,
Right.
and college is not cheap.
College expense. Right.
So it was a stressful time, and I can remember that was the fall, I think, of my senior year, or maybe it happened in the summer leading into the fall. I don't know what it was exactly, but I remember you having to go up to it was a Brooklyn a bit right to start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in order to survive, I got a consulting job on the boat to nowhere. And I went up there and I consulted, drove up there every week, stayed there during the week, and then, had an apartment up there. And the boat to nowhere was going nowhere. Trust me. No, I mean, when I say nowhere, I don't mean in the water. I mean in the business levels. And it wasn't drawing people. And we tried a lot of things to make it work, and it didn't work. So eventually, I was hanging out, got a phone call, or I got on the phone, and I called Carolyn Wagner. Carolyn Gilby was her name at the time. And I said, I understand you have a job in Chicago, as a marketing job in Chicago. Do you think I could put my resume in? And they said, no. I said I had put my resume in. And she said, okay, well, I'll talk to Roger. I think we'd love to have you. So I talked to Roger Wagner, and a few conversations, I was to be hired. Turns out my resume went to East Chicago, the same place, same address that Trump had. My resume went to Trump.
Oh.
And had they called me first, I would have been working there.
Wow.
So instead, I got involved with Jack Binion, one of the greatest operators of all time. And he had two casinos in Chicago, the Empress, one in Illinois and one in Indiana. And I worked at the one in Indiana. And that was a rough beginning. I had a tough time with management and whatnot because I knew a lot more than they knew. And I guess I was trying to deliver it properly. And maybe I was coming off as a know-it-all,
How old were you at this point?
I was in my 40s, early 50s.
Oh, yeah.
Early 50s.
Yep.
Yeah. And anyway, we settled after a year. We settled down. And then I had the responsibility of rebranding Empress into Horseshoe. And what a pleasure that was, and what an experience that was. And by the time I left Chicago, I used to go downtown a lot. And, you had to be careful drinking and driving. And you had to, figure out how to be safe and whatnot. By the time I left Chicago, there was no Uber back then or anything like that. They gave me car service to go down anytime I wanted to go down.
Yeah.
And that's when, while I was out there, that's when Paul was playing football, and I was missing Paul's football, Paul's baseball, Dana's, growing up, and Mike was with me.
Yep.
So we had plenty of time to spend with him, but I was burning to watch Paul's football. It was his senior year, and they were going to have a great team, and they certainly did.
Yeah, they did.
They won everything, and I turned around and said to my boss, "Listen, I would like to fly home on Friday, come back Saturday. So you do whatever you want." So I flew in for 9 games.
That's right.
I made 9 games out of 10.
Yeah.
And then I made the championships too, so it was more than that. So
I think that was my junior year in college, and I came with you to a bunch of those.
Yeah.
And I can remember, actually funny, I remember a funny story from that. So every time you came back, there was usually some coordination. You'd either have to rent a car,
Yeah.
or I might pick you up, or Grandma Rita would help you out somehow. You'd swing by their house. So I remember you called my phone once at Villanova, the regular landline, and as you do, you don't really say hello. You just go into what you're going to say. You're like, I'm coming in Friday, and I want to fly in. I need you to pick me up. I'm going to go here, and then don't worry, Rita will take me back. And you went into this thing. It must have lasted 2 minutes. And at the end, you go, you know what? This is too complicated. I'm just going to rent a car. You had a whole conversation with yourself. I remember playing that for my roommates, and they were dying. They just thought it was the funniest thing. I'm like, yeah, he just had to work it out verbally on my voicemail, and now he knows what he wants to do.
Mr. Direct. Yeah, that was me. It's always been me. Got me in a lot of trouble a lot of times.
Well,
but also it's a very successful tool.
Yeah.
Because you know why? There was no misunderstandings.
No.
Straightforward.
It's very clear.
Right at you.
Yeah. But yeah, that was a lot of. I was in college that whole time, where you were living in Northwest Indiana,
right?
And yeah, Paul and Dana were in high school. Mike was with you guys, and coming home in the summer, and you kept a place back here because in Southern New Jersey, because you wanted somewhere to come home to, and I took the liberty of using that place for a couple of gatherings that may have pushed. One of them might have pushed 100 people. Yeah,
and it single-handedly ruined the neighborhood. But I'll never forget the day we were moving out of there and into another house we were going to rent, into a condo.
Yeah, the condo off of Ocean Heights.
And from the condo to a house we rented, which we eventually bought. All these moves were in a very short period of time. But anyway, I never forget I'm leaving, and a lady across the street, I figure she's going to say goodbye to me. She comes over and says, "I'm so happy you're getting out of here. You were the worst tenant, worst person that ever lived in this neighborhood." And I said, "What do you mean? What are you talking about? We knew you had done some things in there, but we didn't know to the magnitude."
Oh my gosh!
And then when I found out Paul gave the key to what was the big kid's
John
name?
Rochford.
John Rochford.
Shout out to Johnny Rock.
He gave the key to John to use the place whenever he needed it.
Yeah.
He lived down the street. I said, "Oh my God. Oh my God."
It wasn't until I was much older that I looked back and said, "Wow, that just wasn't a good approach on our part, and probably put you guys in a whole lot of liability situations that thankfully never came to be." But so I apologize, but we enjoyed it too.
Apology accepted.
Yeah. But there was a lot of back and forth, and then a few years of that, place was very successful, right? Horseshoe. Hit it out of the park at that point, right?
Legendary successful. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, so successful that it got the company sold to Harris again, of all people. Right here they come again,
mm-hmm.
And they come with their stories. And one of the guys who was president, turned out to be the regional president in Atlantic City. He had been reaching out for me saying, "Hey, listen, when this deal's done, I want to bring you back as marketing guy over 2 places." Well, lo and behold, somebody he favored wanted to come back. So he said, "I'll bring you back as vice president of special projects." Kind of a nonsense job. But they were going to pay for me to come home, pay for me to work there, working for Harris again. And that wasn't an enjoyable thought. And that lasted about 10 months as well. And then, all of a sudden, I get the job. Actually, I got the job of head of marketing up in, not Foxwoods, the other.
Mohegan Sun?
Mohegan Sun.
Yeah.
I get the job, and then I get a call from Roger saying, "Hey, listen, we're buying 5 casinos. One of them is the Atlantic City Hilton, and you can be a part of that. You can be assistant general manager and run the marketing for that property." And so the general manager, I sat down with the general manager, and she was as nervous as anybody I've ever seen. Here comes this guy, and my reputation was preceded me. And apparently it was one that said, you know, this guy's going to get results one way or the other. And they were uncomfortable because they had a nice little country club atmosphere there at the time. And so I came in. The next day she resigned. And my Tony Rodeo, who I had just met at Harris, he was interviewing for the same position that I was interviewing for at Resorts because he wanted out of Harris too. He had been there a while, but he was fed up. So I said to Roger, why don't you bring Tony Rodeo down here as a president and chief executive officer, and I'll work for him. I think that'll work out just fine. And he came down, and we killed it. We just knocked it out of the park.
The Rodeo Juliano combo was epic.
Yeah.
You guys really drove tremendous success at both Hilton and Resorts, which were they under the same ownership at the time?
Yeah.
Is that how they were? Yeah. Okay. So both of those places experienced a renaissance there from, what was that, about 04 to 08, 05 to 08?
Yeah, 05 to 08.
Okay. I mean, great events, put up huge numbers. I remember the night we met the Sopranos there at the Hilton. That was a great night. And I saw Paulie Walnuts in the library or in the lobby the next morning. And I said hi to him. He goes, "Yeah, what's up, kid?" Funny guy. But, you know, a great time period in your career there, for sure. Yeah. And you and Tony just became wonderful friends and worked incredibly well together. It felt like, even just from afar watching you guys really complemented each other extremely well.
Well, it started in the morning with a call, probably around 8 o'clock. And it was him screaming at me, yelling, "Wow, what are you doing here? What's going on? How can we be so bad?" I said, "Tony, relax. We're going to be okay." And here's a guy, excitable guy, intense guy, talking to an intense guy, excitable guy. And yet we made a marriage. And I grew to respect him. He grew to respect me. One of the funny things we used to do, we used to have this big marketing meeting. We invited everybody, operations and everybody. It was really the meeting of the week in the property, and where we laid out everything we were going to do. And I used to sit down at one end, and he sat at the other end, big long table. And he would come up with ideas, and somebody else would come up with an idea. And I might not be in on that idea. I had already laid out some ideas. They were accepted or not, whatever. And he would come up with an idea that I didn't like. And he'd look and say, "Well, what about you?" And I had a little bowl of water. And I said, "Tony, you remember Pontius Pilate? Well, I'm washing my hands with this program that you have here, right? You laid the blame somewhere else. Now I'm laying the blame somewhere else." And we operated that way. But it worked. We had, I'll never forget, first year we had done 30 million. We came in and we did 52. So I said, well, my God, what an improvement. Over 1 year.
EBITDA,
52. So our reward was we got a budget for 63. So I learned a lesson.
Yeah.
Don't give them too much too fast.
Right. A lot of us have heard that story before.
Yeah.
Especially in the commercial real estate business, you had that kind of success, and okay.
Actually,
you grew 40%. Give us another 40.
Actually, the truth of the matter is, we wouldn't have backed off a little bit,
right?
But I just say it that way.
One of my favorite memories from that time period was, I thought one of the coolest things you got to do was the beach concert in Atlantic City, where you brought the Beach Boys in, and it was probably 40,000 people.
Yeah.
Estimates ranged from
25,000.
25 to, some paper printed 60, it's a lot of people.
Yeah,
regardless, you're on the stage. You got to introduce the Beach Boys on the stage in your hometown in front of tens of thousands of people.
Yeah, but that really wasn't the way it went down.
Okay.
What happened was, the entertainment director came over and said, "They're not using the vendors. They're not buying anything. Can you go up there and get them stimulated?" Well, I'm not going to go up there and tell them, hey, go buy something, right? So I go up on stage and I said, I had, this was a rock star moment, and I'll never forget it as long as I'm on this earth. And I got to say, Atlantic City, and 30,000 people, they screamed and yelled. I said, oh my God. I said, see all this around you? I didn't do this. The marketing team did this. They put this all together. It was a beautiful day that day.
Oh, gorgeous. Yeah.
I said, but you know what? I was in charge of the weather. How did I do? And they went, ah! I started screaming because it was a beautiful day.
Yeah.
And that's about as far as I took my introduction to the Beach Boys.
Right. But it was cool. I mean, me and Paul and a few of us were up in the VIP section right up front.
Right.
And behind the rope, a little, I don't know, 30 by 30 area in front of the stage. And we got to watch this legendary band in Atlantic City on the beach in July. And you're right, a gorgeous, perfect day.
Perfect weather.
10 out of 10 beach day. And it was a great night. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But
it was special.
Yeah. Yeah. So that run goes about three years and change. And things really start to change in Atlantic City with the introduction of gaming in Pennsylvania.
Oh yeah,
and
the recession.
And the recession, yeah. So we're talking 07, 08. And the PA casinos were 07 or 06?
Yeah, approximately 07, I think. Yeah.
I can remember reading something in the paper, in the press of Atlantic City. Actually, it might have been Rodeo that said it. He anticipated like a 10% drop off in revenue in the near term. And I don't know what the near term numbers was, but what happened was between the recession and Pennsylvania casinos opening, as I remember it, it went from a $6 billion revenue industry in Atlantic City to about $3
to 3.2 billion.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how much it lost.
Half the revenue goes away.
50%. That was this ugly time.
Yeah.
And still, we could have navigated through that time, and we weren't going to do the numbers that we had been doing. Okay, That wasn't happening. But ownership didn't really understand. And we explained to them, we think we can keep you in the black. That's as good as we can do. Marginally less than the black, a little bit less. That's all that's going to happen. We're losing revenue by the millions. This is obvious every month. Just look at the numbers from around town. Oh, no. That's not going to happen. You're wrong. And they fire Rodeo. And as soon as they fired Rodeo, they zone in on me. Take a few months to get me out of there. Meanwhile, we read a plan for them to succeed. And I'm convinced to this day it would have worked. And they bring in a guy who had sold them a bill of goods, who had run a property within the 5 property brand in down south. Name market escapes me right now, but it wasn't going to work up here. And I was happy to see. I hate to see a man fail, but I knew he was going to fail at this. Well, he didn't fail. He went to minus 20 EBITDA, minus 20 EBITDA, and minus 12 EBITDA, calling the minus 12 a success. It was a colossal failure. And then subsequently, we had brought a body of people that were interested in buying this Hilton for $300 million. Well, they had paid $440 million. So they believed that they could get $440 million for it. Well, that wasn't happening. Okay. So we gave them a buyer for $300 million, which, to tell you the truth, I would have felt bad for the buyer, and later went back and warned them not to do it. So anyway, they wind up with nothing.
Yeah, they sold for 18 million, 20 million.
I don't even know if they were in that sale.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It may not have been. Yeah. But the property eventually traded for about 18 or 20 million.
Yeah, eventually it did, but it might have been somebody else.
From having a $300 million offer not very long before.
Yeah.
And that's how quickly things fell apart in AC. But obviously that doesn't last forever. And today it's a little bit of a brighter story than that. But at the time, back in 08, when that ends, once again, you're left to figure out the next move. And the next move again takes you
So
out of the area.
Rodeo gets a job in Cincinnati at an Argosy, in a former Argosy place in Lawrenceburg, which becomes a Harris. And he asked me to consult for him, not in marketing, in casino operations, because they have a marketing wing, and all the marketing is going to come from that wing. At the same time, he sends my good buddy and today my partner, Matt Cole, young man who we met at the Golden Nugget, who just had a very, very good instincts and a great understanding, a wonderful understanding, I should say, of the business at a very early age. I'm talking 23, 24,
right.
25 years old.
Who's we refer to as the work son in this family.
Right.
Matt Cole, work son.
Right.
Yep. Okay.
And he proceeds to get a consulting deal as well. So we're both down there consulting, and I've got an office and he's got a cubicle. One day they come into me and say, "Hey, listen, man, you got to give up the office. You got to put you in the cubicle." I said, "Why don't you put me with Matt?" So I go with Matt, and there began my real career in marketing, right there. At that point, when Matt and I sat and discussed all the ways in which we would attack any company situation we found ourselves in. In other words, we would market to the point of diminishing returns. We'd find what the return was and market to that point, and we would generate profitability in that manner. And if a place was run perfectly, we'd throw our hands up and say, "We can't do much for you." We found a lot of broken places. A lot of broken places.